All right, everybody, welcome in to Load the Box. It's been a minute. Last time we talked, we were talking about the Vikings 2021 draft class. And this week, we're going to look at the schedule, and then it's probably going to be a little bit of another little break as Jack enjoys some playoff hockey, and I enjoy having no teams really playing. I guess I have the Reds, but they're a 500 team. They stink. But Jack, it's been a minute since we have talked on air. How has your 2 weeks been?
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into the schedule with you a little bit. I think I did another podcast yesterday and kind of went over the schedule, and I'm really excited for the Vikings to play the schedule. I know the schedule rankings came out, and it was the Vikings. They have like the fifth hardest schedule, I believe, off the top of my head. Not 100% sure if that's accurate, but they have the fifth hardest schedule. But I'm just extremely excited to see a hopefully bounce back in Mike Zimmer's defense going up against, and we'll get into this a little bit more as the show goes on, but there's a lot of like young up and coming superstars at the quarterback position in particular that the Vikings are going to get a chance to see, most of them for the first time. So it's a very exciting schedule. I know I'm in the boat. I think I've said this to you before too, that it's hard for me to get super excited this time of year about the schedule, but eventually we're going to be doing shows weekly, talking about the pre-shows to these games and then post-game shows as well. So that will be when we're a little bit more excited, but I'm looking forward to diving into this and kind of going game by game and some of the things we're most excited for each game.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. I'm actually like panic scrambling trying to get that schedule posted onto the uh, onto the screen here. I just don't want to steal somebody else's work, so I'm gonna give up on it. But because I'm looking and I'm like, man, I don't want to be that guy. But we will go through the games game by game briefly. We're not gonna sit here and do a 3 hour show. Going in depth and then just basically giving ourselves content to just replay throughout the season. We're not going to do that. We are going to slowly go through the games here. I said slowly whenever I just said we weren't going to be slow. We're going to quickly go through the games here and kind of discuss the matchups as we sit here towards the middle of May. So a lot of things can change between May and September 12th when the Vikings kick off in Cincinnati, my home city, against the Cincinnati Bengals. Jeff Hawthorne is already in the chat, of course, playing a little bit of troll, saying, bring on the Bungles, which is what my family refers to the Bengals as. A quick story, because we're going to try and keep things quick. The best way I'm going to be able to say anything about this game in May. Last season, the Bengals almost beat the Seattle Seahawks week 1. They were like a field goal away from beating them. And they went out there, or maybe it was the Chargers. Either way, they were a field goal away from winning in week 1, being 1-0. Joe Burrow looked really good. And my dad, in the closing seconds of the game, as the kicker took the field, said, they're going to find a way to bingle this. They're going to find a way to bingle this, as in mess this up. And sure enough, the kicker had a calf strain and shanked the kick wide left. He grabbed his left calf and then said it was his right calf after the game. I mean, the Bengals are the Bengals, and I'm talking a lot of smack now, so I'll eat a lot of crow if we do lose to the Bengals. But looking at this game in May, think this is a win for the Vikings, especially with that revamped defense that I'll talk a little bit more about in the week 2 thing. Jack, what's your outlook on this game?
Yeah, we were talking about this game a little bit, and you'll be in attendance as well for this, correct? Which is
Should be,
exciting.
yeah.
Week 1, first game of the year for the Vikings is in your home city, which is cool. But I'm with you on this one. Cincinnati, I think they're starting to build a better team than they've had in the past several seasons. I think both of us will say we're pretty high on what Joe Burrow brings to the table. They didn't go out and really shore up that offensive line. Yes, they added Jamar Chase, who I think is going to be a beast in the NFL. It's going to be a big headline just talking about the college of LSU in this game with the connections with Burrow, Burrow, Jefferson, and Chase, and that magical run that they went on in 2019. But we were talking about this a little bit before the game. I'm not overly scared of this defense, and I think the Vikings are going to have not necessarily, I can't say a tune-up game because those are not real. The Vikings could very much go out and lose this game, but that defense is going to be towards the bottom half of the league in 2021. If I had to guess, sitting here in May before the season kicks off. But the defense doesn't scare me. The offense was clicking last year, and I think the defense bounces back with getting all of their veterans back and then throwing in some rookies in there as well to hopefully shore up that pass rush from a season ago. So I agree with you. I think the Vikings come out of Cincinnati 1-0.
Yeah, especially with it being Joe Burrow's first game back from the ACL and everything, which, don't get me wrong, he looked amazing last year, but it's going to be his first, live competition after getting that knee fixed up. And then, like you brought up, they didn't do a ton to address the offensive line. I think they had a good draft, but didn't do a ton didn't make any splashy moves on the offensive line. And then also that defense, it's a bunch of guys that I could barely tell you about, except for Troy Waynes, of course, who, Vikings fans will be excited to see. Moving into week 2, the Vikings stay on the road, this time going out west to the desert of Arizona to take on, for the first time, maybe in my lifetime, it feels like, it's going to be the Vikings versus the Cardinals. No Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona. I believe he is still a free agent, so maybe this will be his revenge game if he does end up coming and signing with the Vikings. Looking at this game, of course, the Cardinals added J.J. Watt to their pass rush this offseason. They have DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray maybe going to be taking a step similar to Josh Allen. These are all the storylines that I'm looking at. Looking at this game, I'm penciling it in as a win because I do think Arizona got a little bit overhyped last season. I think that they struggle to run the ball. I think the offense is very one-dimensional. And I think that our pass rush is going to be able to move around, and our secondary will be able to shut down DeAndre Hopkins well enough anyway for the Vikings to get another win in Arizona. Jack, what are you thinking with this game?
Yeah, this would have been a really fun game for Vikings fans to get away from the Minnesota winter if it would have been in December or November or November. I can't even say November correctly right now. But instead, it's going to be a 115-degree game where you're probably not going to want to go down to Arizona because Minnesota summer will just be coming to an end. But this is one of the more intriguing games for me. I will probably say that about 17 times as we go through this schedule. There's a ton of just games where there's a lot of uncertainty revolving around the game, and Kyler Murray is one of those up and coming superstar quarterbacks that I am penciling in somewhere in that top 6, top 7 range. I'm very high on Kyler Murray, and I think I don't know, the Vikings, and you'll see this as we go on through the schedule. I think they got, and it's why their schedule is ranked the 5th hardest. The AFC North and the NFC West are 2 extremely solid divisions. And you start out with the Bengals, who I would say are probably going to be towards the bottom of their division. But the NFC West, I could see any of the 4 teams winning in the NFC West. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Cardinals were a little bit overhyped, but they ended up winning that division somehow because I'm excited to see Kyler Murray. I'm pretty sure James Conner signed there as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think he's their running back. And the last little nugget on this game, I'm excited to see how they handle Isaiah Simmons in year 2. I think he was a player that we both really, really liked coming out of Clemson. I think he was underutilized a little bit in his rookie season. When he was at Clemson, he was the guy where he was like, this guy can play safety, he can play defensive end, he can play linebacker. This guy's all over the field. I think, like I said, he was a little bit underutilized. Excited to see if that defense can take the next step, and I think it's going to be a really entertaining game for Vikings fans.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be, I mean, obviously, there's going to be fans in attendance, and there's an extra game. This whole season is going to be considered a fun one, but moving into week 3, and I had to quadruple check this whenever the schedule was released last week. Seattle comes to Minnesota for a primetime game, and I don't know, I'm getting bullish predicting that we're going to go 3-0 starting off, but I do think we can handle Seattle. Outside of DK and Russ, not a lot of guys on that team seem to stand out as these, all-world players. I think that they'll be better this year than what some people are expecting. I've seen a lot of people thinking there's going to be this nosedive for Seattle. I do think the Vikings will be able to get them. just off of the talent that we've built on our defensive side of the ball, and also we would have beat them last season if Alexander Madison, moved like an inch to the left and got that first down. So I think the Vikings will be able to pull this off, especially if Dalvin is healthy at this point in the season, which we're only 3 weeks in. So knock on wood, he should be. I guess I should find that wood behind me. But so I like Seattle. I like the Vikings to go over Seattle in the home opener on September 26th. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, this is it's like I said, it's a reoccurring theme. Russell Wilson, he's already a superstar. He's won a Super Bowl. He's not up and coming anymore, but he still has his legs too, and that's like I said, very the Vikings have a lot of mobile quarterbacks that they have to go up against this year, which is kind of worrisome because if Mike Zimmer's defenses over the last 6-7 years have had one weakness, it has been mobile quarterbacks. They've been able to do some damage to his defenses, but I'm with you. I think Seattle had like 3 total draft picks. They used one of those draft picks was to scoop up Dwayne Eskridge, who was a wide receiver that I liked out of Western Michigan. But I don't think they've built much other than that. They didn't have the draft capital with only 3 selections this year. There's still some ongoing. I don't know if it's a 100% official yet that Russell Wilson, yes, he's probably going to be playing in Seattle, but there was some drama earlier this offseason as well. But any team that has Russell Wilson on it worries me a little bit. But I do think the Vikings have a legitimate chance at winning. It is funny that for the first time, what seems like forever, the Vikings get Seattle at home. And the last time they played Seattle at home was the 2015 Blair Walsh incident.
That's
so
what I thought.
Hopefully our kickers are on point for this game because I have a feeling they're going to need them.
Yeah, the first month of the season really is intriguing to me, partially because 2 of the games are against Ohio teams. Going into the 4th week of the season, October 3rd, we play the Cleveland Browns. The Browns come up to Minnesota to play in beautiful US Bank Stadium. This is where I give the Vikings their first loss because I think Cleveland is legit this year. Baker Mayfield, I think, kind of blossomed a little bit last season. It got overshadowed by Josh Allen, having a, second place in the MVP voting type of year. But I think Baker last year really got to do his thing where, he was just reading the field and not really trying to force the ball in one direction. So I think that even if they keep Odell, he's going to go out there and I think he has to, he's the quarterback. He's more important than Odell. And I think he has to have that conversation with Odell about, look, man, I'm not giving you the ball if I don't think you're open. Sorry, not sorry. That's the way it's going to be. I'm worried about winning games more than I am feeding your ego. I just went on like a tangent about Odell. I don't hate Odell. I don't think Odell's a diva or anything, but I do think the Browns are going to end up beating the Vikings here. I think they also had a solid draft, and unfortunately, I'm not going to hear the end of it from my buddy Chris Paxitas, who will be doing a Load the Box Browns show by this point. So, Jack, right now I've got us first month 3-1. How are we finishing out the first 4 weeks of the schedule?
This is I think Cleveland is going to be legit this year. I don't think it's necessarily even a surprise at this point. I think a lot of people are saying that, and I agree with you. Cleveland was one of those teams that I think had one of the best drafts across the NFL. Was it? The kid they got out of Notre Dame, that linebacker, was one of my favorite linebackers in this entire draft class. And I don't know if you have their draft class up. Was it Greg Newsome who they took in the first round?
They got Newsome, and then they got Joke in the second. I mean, that defense is scary talented.
Absolutely studs. That you're adding to a defense that already has Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney getting after the quarterback. That's the matchup I'm looking forward to most in this one. This is going to be a true test for Christian Darrisaw and this Vikings offensive line heading into week 4 of the season. I think, Jadeveon Clowney and that's one of the best pass rushing duos in the entire NFL, just mainly because Myles Garrett is he's still youthful and he's an absolute freak. And I think we could see a potential bounce back out of Jadeveon Clowney. He's had injury concerns his entire career and kind of had this up and down trajectory. But if he finds himself on the right defense across from another really elite pass rusher, I think he could have a bounce back season. This Browns team is going to be very, very exciting to watch. Their defense is going to be they're a talent all over the field on the defensive side of the ball. I think they drafted a safety out of LSU last year and he got hurt, or was it I can't, was it Delpit? I believe Delpit's one of their
I
safeties.
believe,
I could
yeah.
be wrong on that,
They
but
have Delpit. They also have
um,
Greedy Williams in their secondary too. So they've got
yes,
an
they. I
LSU
mean,
secondary.
they have playmakers all over on the defense side of the ball, and that's without even jumping into the Baker Mayfield conversation. I'm a Baker Mayfield believer. I think he's going to continue to impress people. Nick Chubb, top 5, top 6 running back in the league as well. So the Vikings are gonna have their hands full in this one, and Vikings fans should be thankful that it's at US Bank Stadium rather than in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think that if the Vikings could manage to win, if they go 2-2 at the beginning of the season, or even 3-1, I think that's a Arizona, Seattle, Cleveland are very tough games to play. Now we move into what I would consider the easy part of the schedule, but a lot is unknown. We played Detroit, and then we play Detroit at home in week 5, and then Carolina on the road, and then we come back home to play Dallas. I'll kind of go over these 3 games in one quick section to speed things along a little bit. The only thing I'll say about the Lions, though, in their draft, they kind of built in the trenches, which I respect a lot. I hate that they did that. I would have much rather seen them take like running backs and quarterbacks and, like taking shots all over the place. No, they got the best offensive linemen in the class. They just got bigger and stronger in the trenches, which is really good. This is also going to be my first ever Vikings game that I've been to in Minnesota. I will be in the great state of Minnesota in week 5 to watch the Vikings take on the Lions. So they better win. I'm chalking it up. We're 4-1 against Carolina. That's another one that I think we win. I think Carolina is still too underdeveloped. Is Sam Darnold going to be the guy? I mean, he's going to be the guy, but is he going to be good? That's the question. I'm not sold. I've never been big on Sam Darnold, so I'll give us a win there. And then I think we beat Dallas in primetime back in Minnesota to go ahead and give us a 7-1 record going into week 9 against Baltimore. I'm feeling bullish about the schedule, and I'm not even ashamed of it. The Vikings are going to, at this point, already have established they have a top 3 defense in the league, and they're here to play, especially that pass rush that I think is going to really get after it this year. Jack, I'll give it back to you to go over the Lions, the Panthers, and then the Cowboys, and then we'll go into this Baltimore game.
Yeah, and speaking of turnover on the Vikings schedule, I mean, you look at they're playing divisions AFC North. There's a bunch of younger quarterbacks in the AFC North that they haven't seen before. There's some young kids in the NFC West that they haven't seen yet as well. If Trey Lance ends up playing, we'll talk about that game later. Go right to the division. There is still a very legitimate chance that the Minnesota Vikings play all 3 of their divisional opponents this year, and all 3 teams have a different starting quarterback than they did a year ago. Starting with Detroit, that will be a different starting quarterback than they've seen over the last 10 or so years, with Matthew Stafford leaving and going to another NFC West team that we will talk about later. But them flip-flopping Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford. I'm less scared of Jared Goff than I am of Matthew Stafford personally. And I didn't love that trade for Detroit. I know they got some valuable draft capital as well, so it was worth it in the long run. Matthew Stafford kind of getting towards the end of his career potentially. So I'm with you on this one. I think that one should be, knock on wood, an easy win for the Vikings. And I hope you
Don't say that.
I
Don't
hope you
say
can
easy win, Jack.
I can't get scared about Detroit. I never have, and I never will. And now that I say that, they're gonna somehow sweep the Vikings.
Hey, because we said we were gonna try and go short tonight, I'm gonna lengthen the show with this little story. One of the first shows we did together was whenever we had that like 12 sack game on Stafford. And Daniil Hunter, I thought was legitimately going to break the sack record that season. I don't know if you remember this, but we went nutso the entire episode about it. It was like all we talked about. We were just like, yeah, we won. We sacked him 11 times or whatever. So I understand that you can't be afraid of Detroit, but I'm nervous because I'm spending a lot of money to come up here.
I'll go back and say what I said at the beginning of the show. No wins are handed to you in the NFL, and that is the truth in Detroit or against Detroit at home in this one. And then jumping over to another away game, going down to Carolina, new faces there. Sam Darnold, another quarterback that the Vikings aren't familiar with, being in the playing in the AFC with the Jets for the last couple seasons. Now he takes over Carolina. Is this going to be a new regime that he's going to be the Carolina Panthers starting quarterback? And they have Christian McCaffrey back there as well. DJ Moore is a stud. I like the pieces they're putting into place. They go out and draft J.C. Horn, solid cornerback. It was kind of 1A, 1B with Horn and Sertan. So I like their draft. I think this game could be end up being close just so you're going down to Carolina, but I do agree. I think the Vikings are the better football team. Then jumping to Halloween night, which is going to be interesting for some of the Vikings fans that are parents out there having
Oh
to deal with
no.
trick or treating and a Halloween night game, which I think is going to be entertaining for people watching on TV because there's always got people dressed up in some of the most obnoxious ways during games like this, and that'll be fascinating. I will do a quick plug on an article that I wrote last week now for this game. I compared the collegiate stats of Dak Prescott to new Vikings quarterback Kellen Mond. The numbers are scary similar. Both were MVPs of the Senior Bowl. Really, really, really similar career paths in college. Will that translate to the NFL? We probably won't know at this point because this is still Kirk Cousins' team, but just wanted to plug that article quick. Dallas drafted potentially the best defensive player in the entire 2021 draft class in Micah Parsons. They're trying to rebuild that defense up because they have the pieces in play on the offensive side of the ball. They went out and they extended or signed Dak Prescott to a long-term deal. So it's going to be a fun one. Sunday Night Football, first official primetime game of the season for the Vikings. So we'll see if they can get those primetime jitters out of the way on Halloween.
Absolutely. And then we go a 3-game homestand down to Carolina, back for one last stop at home, say hi to the wife and kids, and then we're going back on the road for 2 weeks. We go to Baltimore week 9 to play Lamar Jackson. I'm going to chalk this one up as a loss as well. I think Baltimore is going to be good this year. I think Lamar Jackson takes that next step in his career from being like just the, really fast quarterback that's elusive and can do that kind of thing. I think he's going to develop into, at no point in his career is he going to turn into like Tom Brady passing the ball. I don't think that's to be expected. I think he's going to take a little bit of a step in throwing the ball more accurately and with a little bit more touch. And I think he's going to have a big year out of that. I think Cleveland and Baltimore are going to be going back and forth all year with this division. It's going to be exciting to watch, but I'm going to chalk this one up as a loss. And then I'll go ahead and do the Chargers game really quick. It's a dub. Justin Jefferson's going for 300 yards. Justin Herbert is a fake rookie of the year. He's not that good. Chargers fans are acting like they have the next Joe Montana or the next Tom Brady. I shouldn't say he's not that good. He looks all right, but like,
Wait, there's
I want to
Chargers
see him do
fans?
it. Yeah, right. You wouldn't know. So this is basically the 9th home game for the Vikings or the 10th home game for the Vikings because it is in what should be San Diego. But unfortunately, though, it'll just be a bunch of Vikings fans filling the LA Coliseum or whatever they're calling it up there. So I think that's not an easy win, but I do think the Vikings go over in that one. And kind of, I don't know why, but that whole Rookie of the Year thing, I'm going to hate Justin Herbert for the rest of his career now, no matter what. He cut his hair last year and he looked like a dweeb for the rest of the season anyway, so I don't know. Me and Justin Herbert, I hope I never get famous and have to talk in front of like thousands of people because he will immediately like boycott my show and everyone in LA will hate me, but all 6 fans. But Jack, what do you think of Baltimore and then the Chargers?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think J.K. Dobbins in Baltimore could take a step in year 2. Like you said, Lamar Jackson, he's proven time and time again that he's very explosive on the ground with his legs. He's been very good with his arm as well at times. I think last year he regressed a little bit. I think that's normal when you're coming off of an MVP-like season. They go out and they get him some playmakers in the draft. They get Rashad Bateman, Minnesota Gopher, former Minnesota Gopher, and they get Tylan Wallace, who I think we were both fairly high on as well and had hopes that the Vikings were going to pick up there in the 3rd or 4th round. So they're surrounding him with talent on the offensive side of the ball. Baltimore always feels like they're stout on defense. So it's going to be a tough test. I don't love the chances. I think I'd like it a little bit more if the Vikings had this one at home. It's going to be fun because home field advantage is actually going to be a thing again. There's actually going to be fans in the stands, which is going to be fun, but it's going to be a tough one in Baltimore. And then going from one coast to another coast back-to-back weeks, which will be a storyline because it's always a storyline. Vikings go out and, like you said, the guy that I won't say stole because Justin Herbert, it was like a 1A, 1B. I'm not going to be as upset, but I do get upset at the people saying that Justin Jefferson doesn't deserve because there's people saying that Herbert deserved it way more. I wouldn't necessarily go that far. I think
Hobart
Justin
Boko
Jefferson.
echoed that Baker Mayfield set like 2 years ago. Jefferson Boko echoed that was set by like Andre Johnson in 2001. Like you got to go back 20 years to find what I won't. We can do this another time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm sure this will get brought up again when we start talking
Yeah.
pregame shows for the Chargers. But I do think the Vikings go into that brand new, really nice stadium that the Chargers just built. The Chargers and Rams are sharing, and I think they come out of this one with a win. I don't. I mean, I like what the Chargers did. They went out and got Rashawn Slater. They're trying to prove to Justin Herbert that, hey, they're going to protect him. They get Derwin James back in their secondary, who's an absolute stud. So I think the Chargers could make a little bit of noise. But again, if we're talking about this a month or two now and Aaron Rodgers is in Denver, if that trade were to ever actually happen and he ends up in Denver, Justin Herbert's going to be playing against Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes in the same division. And I don't care if he's offensive rookie of the year. I don't care what accolades he piled up as a rookie. He's not going to come out on top of that division with Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers in the same division. I think Vikings fans would be pretty happy with that if that were the case, that Aaron Rodgers was in Denver. Hasn't been a lot of news on that side of things in the last couple of weeks, which seems a little bit odd, but I'm with you on this one. I think the Vikings go into Los Angeles and come out with a win.
Absolutely. So through 10 weeks, the Vikings do have a bye week 7. So 9 games in. I have the Vikings currently at 7-2. And I'm Jack. What do you got them? Oh, have you been doing like actual wins and losses?
I actually haven't been doing actual win losses. I don't know. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and it's going to take. We can speed things up.
I was
going
gonna
to
say
I'll
go. So I do want to take a second, not too long. We do play Green Bay at home on the in week 11, the 21st of November. Green Bay, a lot of question marks around them and the Aaron Rodgers situation. Personally, I think that was Mo like him just flipping off Gunter Kuntz, and then he's going to immediately just come back and probably put him in the NFC Championship game again. But he'll probably sign a big fat contract at some point in there. But as a football fan, I just have to say on this Rodgers thing, Brian Gunter Kuntz, I think is it. He should lose his job. That Jordan Love pick will go down as probably one of the dumbest picks I think ever. Because even if he doesn't win like 2 Super Bowls, why'd you pick him? Like he has to. That's his goal. Because like you have Rodgers, who is capable of winning. He's won one. He can go and win another one. He's been in the NFC Championship. He just won the MVP. It seems like they could have used that weapon or that draft pick to get anybody else, another weapon for Rodgers on the offense and a defensive guy, and instead they drafted a guy who didn't put pads on one Sunday last season because he was a healthy scratch in every game. And I'm a Jordan Love fan, but I don't know. It just seemed like bad timing. It felt like really bad timing. I think the Vikings. I always do this. I always do splits with division opponents. I just assume we're going 3-3 in the division. So I'm going to give us the home game, and then in week 17, I'm going to give us a loss. Jack, what are your thoughts on this Aaron Rodgers Green Bay situation?
Yeah, a lot can change from now up until November 21st. Obviously, is it going to be the start of Jordan Love's career against the Minnesota Vikings for many years to come, or that's the storyline of this. They went out, they got Eric Stokes, speedy corner, which fine, and then they waited until the 3rd or 4th round to get a wide receiver, another weapon for Rodgers, which I thought was kind of odd. But Amari Rodgers is another player that we are both very high on. I think he could be lethal in that Packers offense, especially if Aaron Rodgers does stay in Green Bay, which at this point, who knows? But I think I'm with you. I think the Vikings take this one at home, and the back half of the schedule with I think the last 2 games are Green Bay and Chicago. It's going to be very dependent on where these teams sit. It could very well come down to the wire for the division those last 2 weeks, or one of these teams could be resting. I made a new word. Benching and resting are one word apparently now, but we could be seeing a game where Mike Zimmer wants to play all of his starters in the last week in a meaningless game, and Mackenzie Alexander's back in Minnesota now, and if he gets hurt, then maybe he's going to want out of Minnesota. That's a joke. Hopefully it registers. But Yeah, I think the Vikings beat the Packers at home. I think on paper, the Vikings still have a slightly better roster when they're fully healthy, but obviously Aaron Rodgers can elevate the play for the Green Bay Packers. He absolutely slaughtered this young defense last year, this young and banged up defense that didn't have 3 or 4 of its starting players on the defensive side of the ball. Cameron Dancer, Jeff Gladney were both rookies, and I think it was their first game of the year, first or
Yeah,
second game of the
they
year.
put a smacking on us on the first game, but then DJ
Yes.
Wanham got some sweet revenge in that second game.
That is true, and Delvin Cook ran all over him. So I think the Vikings and the Packers are going to be matched up well this year, and I have a feeling that it's going to come down to those two teams for the NFC North, especially if Aaron Rodgers is still the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Chicago is in a rebuilding year, although I think we both were heartbroken seeing Justin Fields go to Chicago. And I think Detroit is Detroit. So, until they prove otherwise, I will just assume that they are going to win no more than 6 games and they will be in the basement of the division because that doesn't just happen overnight. But Bob Day is in the chat. He said smart take talking about your Rodgers takes there, and then he said Packers 3, Vikings 148. And I'm feeling it. So I'm gonna go through these next 3 games a little quicker here. We go to San Francisco. We spend a lot of time in California this year. It's just 2 games, but still, we go to San Francisco. I think the story of that game is going to be, is Jimmy Garoppolo still the starter? If he's healthy, I don't think he's losing his job if he's healthy, because I do think he's good enough to run that offense efficiently enough that they'll be in contention for their division. The issue is he could very easily get injured in week 1 or 2, and then Trey Lance could be thrown into the fire. What might be interesting is, does Trey Lance get thrown into the fire, or will they put a guy like Nick Mullins or Blaine Gabbert or whoever the backups are? Last year, do they put a guy like that into the fold? I think the Vikings will win that game because I don't predict Jimmy G will be stouting. I'm not going to predict the guy gets hurt, but if it sounds like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. He gets injured a lot. So what am I supposed to do? Going back, playing the Lions. Sweeping the Lions. I'm breaking my rule. And then the Steelers. I think the Steelers are due for a top 10 pick, and this is the year for it. I'm not impressed. This is like the Peyton Manning year where he had that elite defense that took him and won a Super Bowl, even though he couldn't throw a ball more than 10 yards. This is that year for Big Ben. I think even if they look good in the beginning of the season, we're playing them towards the end. Big Ben's going to be cooked by this point. Their offense is going to be all underneath. I'm looking for a lot of jump droughts, pick sixes. So I'm having us go 3-0 on that stretch, and we haven't lost since week 9 to Baltimore. Jack, what are you looking at with San Francisco, Detroit, and then back at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, I think the 49ers are very similar to the Minnesota Vikings from a year ago. If you look at their 2020 roster compared to their 2021 roster, I think their fan base is excited to get a lot of their superstars back on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, that got them to a Super Bowl a couple of years ago where their defense absolutely carried them, and they were, a very, very, very good defense. I'm curious to see if that comes back in 2021. It's going to be, and then you kind of covered kind of the main storyline. Is it going to be the Trey Lance show by this point? Is Trey Lance, there's going to be buzz when you draft a rookie quarterback with the 3rd overall pick. There's going to be buzz. If Jimmy Garoppolo, it's the same thing about the Vikings drafting Kellen Mond, which one, I don't agree with it with Kellen Mond if you draft a guy in the 3rd or 4th round, but there's going to be buzz around Trey Lance. Any rookie quarterback you take in the first 3 or 4 rounds, there's going to be buzz around them in training camp, and there's going to be a lot shorter leash, not necessarily maybe from the coaching staff, but there's going to be a lot shorter leash for quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins, which I don't think is fair for Kirk Cousins because he's been a very good quarterback for the Vikings the last 3 seasons. But this Minnesota Vikings fan base, that's just the way it's always been. The moment if he throws an interception in week 1 against Cincinnati, there's going to be fans tweeting, hey, is it the Kellen Mond time, or is it Kellen Mond's turn to get on?
Well, you've already got people saying like, oh, Kellen Mond almost threw an interception in 7-on-7s at rookie OTAs, and it's like, come on, people.
Yes. But I've heard a lot of really, really good things about Trey Lance. I know he's extremely smart. Had a weird year only playing in 1 game for North Dakota State, but the year prior, go look at his stats. I don't have them in front of me, but they are insanely good. So I wouldn't be shocked if Trey Lance is playing at this point of the season, but I'm with you. I'm not going to be shocked if it is still Jimmy Garoppolo's team, if this team has a winning record at this point, because their defense is still very good. So I think it's a toss-up game, honestly, where I think I see the Vikings as a very similar team with a slightly better quarterback play than the 49ers. Jumping in, we can kind of breeze through the Detroit game. I think that's a win. We already talked about their draft and kind of what they're trying to do, what they're building for. And then going in, is it a Thursday night game, December 9th, against Pittsburgh?
I believe so, yeah.
I'm not scared of Ben Roethlisberger like you. I'm not scared of him at this point of his career. I know they still have some very good wide receivers, and they have Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, who came into his own last season as a rookie, and then Juju Smith-Schuster, the TikTok boy himself, signed a 1-year deal. So I don't know, that'll probably be the biggest storyline for Pittsburgh in this game is Juju Smith-Schuster dancing on the Norseman logo at the 50-yard line before the game, or is he finally cut off from all social media as Mike Tomlin finally sick of it? I think that's going to be the storyline, and I like the Vikings coming out with a win with that one as well.
Yeah, I think the storyline could also be like, can Big Ben throw a ball from, the one side of the end zone to the other side of the end zone, because it's December and I don't think he'll be able to.
Now that we're saying this, Big Ben's gonna somehow be in the prime
MVP
of his career, and he's gonna have an MVP. And the Steelers are gonna be the Steelers of old,
and they're gonna steamroll us,
bullying people. They drafted. We didn't even mention they drafted Najee Harris, who some people had as the number 1 rated running back. I think I had him as my 2nd rated running back behind. I had Travis Etienne ahead of him, but I think they're going to use him a lot more like they used the guy like Le'Veon Bell. They're going to use him in the passing game. He's going to be their featured running back. So that'll be a storyline as well. But I'm not overly excited or overly scared of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you get it as a home game. I think that benefits the Vikings.
It absolutely does. Moving on, I'll go ahead and cover this last month because 3 of the teams are the same teams that we've played already. We play Chicago in Chicago, and then the next week, the day after Christmas, we play the Los Angeles Rams back in Minnesota. Then we go a few miles to the east. We play Green Bay in Green Bay, and then we come back home to play Chicago. Chicago, obviously, they made the big splash. They moved up. They got Justin Fields. Reports came out that the Vikings wanted Justin Fields, but either way, I think Cousins was, knock on wood, Cousins is the planned starter for all 17 games this season. Is Andy Dalton going to be playing at this point? I doubt it. We play them so late. I don't think we get to see Andy Dalton. I think Justin Fields is playing. I think we put enough pressure on him to... He's probably been playing for a while now, but I think in both the games we'll get enough pressure on him that we'll be able to keep this game really low scoring. What scares me about it, and this is why I am going to say we'll split with Chicago this year, his mobility does frighten me. I've seen Trubisky just, do some crazy things with his legs against the Vikings. So maybe it's a game where we have to have a guy like Chaz Surratt or, one of these small athletic linebackers just out there constantly watching and waiting to get the moment to take out Justin Fields. But I'll say we split with Chicago. We already talked about Green Bay. I'm going to say we split with them as well. And then against LA, this one's the interesting one, and this is also going to be the final one that I think we talk about. A lot of people think LA is going to be all that. I am here to say LA is missing the playoffs this season. Matt Stafford is a we talk about Cousins padding his stats late in games, and he's all he does this, he does that. Matt Stafford is that toned up to 11. He is the ultimate, he's down by 27 points with 10 minutes to go, and he's just lobbing them to wide open wide receivers, and everyone's like, oh, look at how good he is. And I've never been a Matt Stafford guy. I'll end up eating crow whenever they beat us 56-7 in this game, but I've never bought into Matt Stafford. I think he's aging. I think he'll get dinged up at some point in the season, and he'll be playing with a tender hamstring or something wrong with his throwing hand, or something's going to happen this season. I'm just not a big Stafford guy. I don't know. So I think that we can beat the Rams as a statement game, and I think we end up being a 3-4 loss team in contention for the division all the way to the end. Now, we could end up being a 12-13 win team. that ends up being a wild card because Green Bay could also be really good this year if they keep Rodgers. But we'll see about that. Jack, what do you think about these two Chicago games and then the LA game as well?
Yeah, so we were celebrating at the beginning of the show that the Vikings, they got out of their scary primetime game. They didn't have to go into Seattle and play a primetime game the first time, which feels like years, but they did not get out of the other game that they also normally get dealt going. I think it's a Monday night game
Yeah,
in Chicago, which it's never easy for the Vikings to play in Chicago. It always feels like they end up splitting and they always find a way to lose if it's Trubisky running all over them at Soldier Field. Obviously, Mitchell Trubisky is not there, but I will say this: Justin Fields is a hell of a lot better than Mitchell Trubisky with his legs, and I think he's going to be a better quarterback than Trubisky ever was. And I agree with you. I think Fields will be playing. I think there's a chance we see Fields starting week 1. I don't fully buy into this. Andy Dalton is our guy. Andy Dalton, and then you go out and you trade. I don't remember exactly what they traded up to move up the 9, 10 or whatever spots that they jumped the Vikings, took Justin Fields, who there's several reports that are verified saying the Vikings were interested in taking Fields there at 14. They jumped the Vikings, and now he is their quarterback of the future. So I'm excited to see how that turns out, and I think they end up splitting. I think the Vikings lose at Soldier Field on Monday Night Football. It'll probably be a close game that comes down to a field goal or something like it always does. Then they come back home for the final game of the season, and they win that one if they aren't already kind of slated into their playoffs wherever
right.
they're playing or whoever they're playing. If it's going to be a wild card, if they're at that point where, like you said, Green Bay is ahead of them in the division, why risk letting your starters go out there and get hurt? We've seen that happen in years past. It's not worth it. And I'm with you. I don't think Matthew Stafford is all that great, but he's also never had a team that's as built as the Rams are, because they have a very good defense. Cam Akers could come into his own in year 2. They have some solid, like a really underrated receiving corps with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. But I think that's another one where it helps with the Vikings get that as a home game. I think that they're more than capable I cannot speak. I think they're more than capable of beating the Rams. I don't know why I keep getting caught up in what I'm trying to say. I should probably just stop trying to say that. But yeah, I think Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback. I'll take Kirk Cousins over Matthew Stafford any day of the week. I think the Vikings edge out the Rams at home. And I think, I don't know if I'm ready to say what you're saying with the schedule, if they're going to be a 12, 13, 14 win team, but I think that this is a bounce back season for the Vikings that could very well end up being a 9, 10, 11 win season where they are a wild card team. Obviously, there's only one bye now with the new playoff schedule, or playoff structure, excuse me. I don't anticipate the Vikings being the number 1 seed in the NFC. I think there's a lot of really good teams in the NFC. So I think the Vikings bounce back and potentially make some sort of playoff run, but it's going to have to start with a wild card, or if they end up winning the NFC North, if Aaron Rodgers does leave, and that really opens up the window for the Vikings to win now in their division. Because I don't think if Aaron Rodgers leaves, there's not a team in the division that scares me for the NFC North title, and I think the Vikings have a legitimate chance at winning that, even though people are saying that they had the 5th hardest schedule from a year ago. We talked about that on my podcast yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever that was, just how much that actually, the weight that carries, because we could be having this conversation in August and the schedule could look a lot easier with injuries and everything that happens from May up until the preseason, through the preseason, into the regular season. And that could very well flip-flop halfway into the season too, because injuries, weird things happen all the time in the NFL. But sitting here right now, I feel fairly comfortable in saying that I think the Vikings are a playoff team, and I do think Mike Zimmer gets his team bounced back and they turn around and continue the weird flip-flopping of years, odd year, even year, odd year, even year, where they make the playoffs every odd year since Mike Zimmer has taken over the head coaching duties in Minnesota.
I'm gonna disagree with you. This is my long game prediction. Bob Day just commented, "Give me 11 wins, solid playoff spot." You're saying there's a chance. Hey, all you got to do is make the dance, and then you see what happens, Bob. That is absolutely all you need to do. Is once you're in that playoffs, You can have a miracle run like the Giants have had many a time. I think Green Bay was a wild card
The
team when they
Packers
won the
did
Super
when
Bowl.
When Rodgers won it. The Packers were.
Yep.
I think
So
the Steelers might be another one too.
yes, the Steelers I think won. It's it's not impossible to win. It's just a little bit tougher because you don't get to play at home. But this is my prediction for the season. Week 1, we just wiped the floor with Cincinnati. Cousins looks good. All week they're talking about him being an MVP candidate. Shocko, he's hurt. He doesn't get to play. Kellen Mond steps in. Case Keenum 2017. Magical mystery toe. Now, Cousins is going to try and come back in one of these primetime games, and he's going to look bad. And then Mond's going to come in, and Mond's the quarterback. But this time, Mike Zimmer gets the chance to do what maybe he should have done in 2017 or 2018. He's going to keep the quarterback that took him to the championship game. They're going to deal Cousins, and the Vikings go back-to-back in 2022 and 2023. And there it is, straight from my mouth. We don't have time to talk about this. We'll have to talk about it later, but this is my last thing on the show. Will Tom Brady's Buccaneers be the first team to ever go 17-0 in a regular season? The betting lines say yes. Also, by the way, the Vikings betting lines, I think, have them as an 11-win team this season. So we have a pretty... Vegas likes us, and I really like the defense, too. So give me a top 5 defense this year. Really good running game. Tom Day must not be watching because I haven't seen anything about the offensive line, and I don't think we said anything about it either. But with Wyatt Davis being good to go, this is going to be a fun year, especially if you buy... Oh, I just punched my microphone. Especially if you buy number 56 Garrett Bradbury jerseys like I do. So, Jack, I'll let you give us the last little bit and kind of walk us out. I think we're going to take a little bit of a break from the show unless major news breaks, but, we'll be back soon enough. Follow the Twitter at LTB Vikings. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and follow the Facebook page. Make sure to turn on notifications so that way you can get notified when we go live and do everything. And smash that subscribe button, hammer the like button, all that stuff. But it's going to be a fun year. It really is. So just stay tuned at LTB Vikings to see what's happening with the show schedule and everything, because other than this schedule, we could, in theory, come on here and talk about, like, Patrick Peterson changing his number to 7, but I don't think anybody wants to hear that. So, Jack, I'll let you be the last thing that people hear from us for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to stop talking quite yet because you're probably going to... I did tweet something out on my own Twitter today and on the LTB Twitter account. There are legit people. There's I don't have the name on the top of my head, and when I say something like this, it sparked something where FanDuel was tweeting about it. Kid from PFF was talking about it.
Oh God!
There are legit people out there, and I think this is a lot of people. Someone tweeted this in Vikings Twitter that everyone in Vikings Twitter came together for the first time in what feels like forever, because there's people out there comparing or saying absurd, weird statements that should never be said, saying Tyreek Hill is the best deep threat wide receiver of all time. I couldn't get on here and do a Vikings podcast without saying or completely shutting that down and asking, are people forgetting who Randy Moss was, the best wide receiver, the most talented wide receiver of all time? I think there's debate for
he's the
older
best.
people that are in here that are going to tell me that Jerry Rice is the best. But Randy Moss is the most talented wide receiver that I think I've ever been able to watch. And yes, Tyreek is fast, and I'm not trying to discredit what Tyreek Hill has done, but he's doing it with arguably one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, something Randy Moss didn't have until he went to New England. And oh, by the way, when he went to New England, he was breaking all sorts of records with that quarterback instead of playing with Gus Frerotte and Dante Culpepper for the first few years of his season, or first few seasons of his career in Minnesota. So I just wanted to shut that down. Also, if
the disrespect ends now.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure. I had to get that off my chest before we ended the show. Also, I would keep your ears out. It sounds like there's still some interest in that cornerback position. The Mike Hughes trade, which we forgot to bring up, he was dealt for the Vikings got a 6th rounder,
and we gave them
got a 7th rounder and Mike Hughes, which I've heard some things. It doesn't sound like the medical stuff is actually checking out for Mike Hughes. So I think, it's safe to say it's a lot easier trade that can be won on the Chiefs side, because if he is healthy, and he plays meaningful snaps for him, it's going to be like, hey, we just got this for literally next to nothing. So I fully anticipate the Vikings are going to sign another cornerback in the upcoming days, and I would keep your ears open on that subject as well. But other than that, I don't have anything, no extraordinary stuff. I think it's kind of just it's that weird part of the season where like the Vikings are into mini camp now. The schedule release was kind of the PR stunt of the NFL that they have until probably training camps start. So it's kind of a gray area, or not a gray area, just a down time of the season, which Jordan and I will probably take a couple weeks off, like you said, and just enjoy ourselves a little bit and have these Wednesday nights off. But we
And
probably
then
will come on.
Coming June 1st, the 2022 mock draft.
Don't get me started on that. I've had so much free time in the last like 2-3 weeks because I haven't been able to log into the
Yeah.
draftnetwork.com and do mock draft after mock draft. But if there's anything drastic, any big news, I'm sure we'll hop on and do a quick show, probably quicker than the
Absolutely.
show went tonight. But wanted to dive into the schedule. We'll be doing it again as the year goes on. We'll be talking more in depth. So make sure you're following us on Twitter at LTB Vikings. That's where you find all of our updates, and we're trying to do a better job about being a little bit more active on the Twitter as well. So interact with us. We love questions. We love interacting